we're getting spam FaceTimes now. So I've had to disable all my FaceTime because I got woken up at 1 a.m. with FaceTime groups and of people you don't know. It's like, what's going on? It's crazy.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like we're going to go live in a few. And here we are. We're live.
Hello.
There we go. All right. Well, here I am live with Stuart and Dean of Galahad. Thought I'd just talk some music with you guys.
Yeah. Good evening.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's what is it, like 7 or 8 o'clock over there?
Yeah, 7 o'clock over here.
Yeah. I know I'm trying to get used to all the time zones. I mean, when I was in California, that was even longer, you know, at an extra 3 hours. First of all, I wanted to say, I mentioned to Stuart that I've been a fan of Galahad since 2002, when whoever sends out the CDs sent me Year Zero, and I was like, I heard the name, you know, because I was I got into the British, what they call neo-prog, which, you know, I kind of think that's a ridiculous title. I just, you know, it's progressive rock. You know, you're doing something, you know, you guys are progressing beyond what happened in the 70s. And so.
Yeah, it's not a title I ever liked, to be honest.
I mean, the first British band that I got into from the 80s was IQ. I saw them live here in when I was living in Los Angeles. And from then on, like I was telling Stuart, I just went down the rabbit hole. Okay, you know, everybody says, well, if you like this band, then you're gonna like this. And it's like, and I had always seen the name Galahad. So it's like when I got that sent the Galahad CD, I was like, okay, well now I can get into these guys, because, you know, I didn't know where to go and buy a lot of music outside of the United States. And this was, you know, before Amazon got big. And then when I heard that, I was like going, wow, this is really, really modern. I mean, this is I think it was one of the first times when a band wasn't trying to sound like something from the past. You guys were trying to sound like, you know, you're going forward. And, you know, I think you were of the time, you know, because a lot of that, heavier guitars happening, and it was no longer, you know, the 70s, 80s style guitars. It was like, or even some of the 90s. It was like, it sounded like it was, you know, where progressive rock should be, the direction they should be going. I mean, you know, there's a lot of bands that are stuck in the past, you know, and it's a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because, you know, you're exposing newer people to what happened. But it's, at the same time, it's like, you know, you want to give them the textbook definition of progressive, and that's what, you know, Galahad really it is. It follows that, and a lot of the bands just seem to want to sound, you know, I remember back in the 90s, a lot of the neo-progressive bands that were coming out of different countries, and it's like their CD might be out in 1997, but they sound like they're in 1982 because they're trying to copy what you guys did back in the 80s, and it's like, no, that's not the point of being a progressive rock band. It's like you're supposed to do something different, you know.
Yeah, I used to call it regressive rock.
Yeah. Actually, I had a friend that he calls it that, you know, or retro prog, you
Yeah.
know. And you know, so since then, you know, I've been getting all your releases. One thing I've been listening to in my car for the past almost week is When Worlds Collide, the double compilation. And that's one thing that if someone's trying to get into the band, I think that that's a starting point to you can see where, you know, all the different
Yeah.
styles that you guys have had, you know. I mean, your earlier stuff, like on Sleepers, has a more, I want to say, a little bit of a Genesis sound, but
It's more.
again,
It's certainly
like,
more generic. But before Dean joined, I think we were more of a generic kind of prog band to a certain extent. With Sleepers, that was the first time we started using sequences and loops and all that kind of stuff. And then with Dean, we just took it to the nth degree, took it much further on, because that was with Carl, obviously, who now lives over in China, of all places.
oh, wow.
So, yeah. But
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's what I like. That's what I like about the newer stuff is that it has that sequences, and it's like, and my girlfriend, who's really not into progressive rock, likes a lot of the techno beats that are in some of the songs, and she said, "Oh, I like these guys." So it's like,
That's good.
you know,
Dean's fault.
Yeah. I always take the blame. Although it is a band decision, I always take the blame.
But that's what we like. The fact that we with yourself, obviously Dean, is having something in the band that, you know, a keyboard player who isn't automatically, you know, playing stuff like Tony Banks or Rick Wakeman or Patrick Moratz or someone like that. You know, the fact that we're coming from a slightly different angle, a more modern angle in a way. But yours is 80s pop, isn't it? Really, initially.
Yeah, I just say a bit like Ron, really, where I had to do the journey as well. When I joined in 97?
Yeah.
96, 97 I joined.
Yeah.
And I had to have that same journey of actually I was going out buying CDs. I was asking the rest of the guys in Galahad what bands I should be listening to, and going out and buying Pink Floyd and Genesis and Yes albums and trying to get an idea of what the whole movement was about, and then just sort of didn't really pay much attention to it and just went off and did my own thing.
And why not?
Yeah.
well, my journey into progressive rock, at the time, I didn't even know what progressive rock was. It was in 1980. On my birthday, a friend of mine gave me a cassette of Rush Permanent Waves. And I asked him, I said, "Why are you giving me this? Because I have no idea who these people are." Up until that time, the only music I was listening to was over the radio. And I really wasn't caring who it was. It was just music, you know. And I think 1980 started me on a slow build until 93, when I saw IQ live. I was like going, okay, I need to investigate this genre a lot more, because up until that time, in 1981, I bought that Classic Yes, where it had the compilation, and then Queen's Greatest Hits. I got those two, and then the first ELP on cassette, and then later on, when MTV started here in the United States, I saw the music video for Marillion's Kaylee, and so it's like, okay, I got to get them, you know. But at that point, I didn't know what progressive rock was. You know, it didn't. It took me into the '90s to find out what it was all about, and it wasn't really until 1993 was basically my starting point, and I was going everywhere. I was just grabbing up things. I mean, some were really good, some were very awful. I remember it was a band from Italy, and they combined it. I think they were called Black Jester, and they combined that speed metal with Marillion, and it just didn't work. I bought one CD from them, and I'm like going, no, this is just not. I think those are two styles that you don't mix together, you know, and it was like almost like having that guy Yngwie Malmsteen on the guitar, you know, just going noodling all over the place, and it's just, you know.
I saw Wingy a few years ago actually, and it wasn't the most exciting concert in the world. And the singer, Jolyn Turner, was the singer, and he basically spent most of the time at the side of the stage waiting to come on and do something. And you could tell that he was so bored because we could see him behind the curtains because it was just all Wingy, just soloing all the time. It's hilarious.
It's a bit like Stuart in rehearsals. Just sat around waiting to actually get a chance to sing.
Can I have a go? Can I have a go?
Oh dear.
Well, it's also interesting when you got you know, prog bands where there's no front man, that everybody has an instrument going on, but then you kind of miss having, you know, someone up in front that kind of in a way is like the conductor in a way, you know. It's like, you know,
a focal point.
Yeah, a focal point of everything, you know, kind of giving some, you know, more of a dynamic. I just like that, you know, especially since watching old clips of Genesis with Peter and Phil right up in front, and then we saw in '94 I saw a local guy who's a multi-instrumentalist, and he did the Lamb in its entirety, and he came out with a boombox, and it was like had a local DJ going, and here's a long distance dedication of an old classic Genesis song, and then it started playing Invisible Touch, and then he looked at the boombox, and then he just crashed it in a can and started bent, and then they started going into the Lamb, and it was like they didn't have enough time to do the full Lamb, so what they did is they shortened it down to about 45 minutes, and part of it was the singer was explaining the story, you know. I think it was like from basically like half of the first disc and then about half of the second disc, and you know, it was just amazing to hear. You know, for me, that was kind of the closest thing I was ever going to experience seeing the Lamb live.
Mm.
So, you know, it's just Prog Fest in the Los Angeles area really opened my eyes to all different bands, you know, that I normally wouldn't have heard of, because, you know, in the 70s, I really, you know, I was too young, and I didn't care about music, and then it wasn't until the 80s when I started to care. But full on in the 90s, then it's like had to see a lot of the bands. Like I've seen the band IQ a couple times, you know, in Los Angeles, down in Mexico, and then a couple times here on the East Coast. In 4 times, and I slightly different incarnations each time. People leaving and new people coming in. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of times bands that start, in their beginnings, it's like such a small percentage of the band, that they'll retain that original lineup. I mean, there's so few of those bands out there. Everybody leaves for whatever reason it is, and then you get or sometimes some bands just need new blood. They run their course.
Yeah, so I think it's quite a tough life to, for some of these bands. It must be really tough for. I mean, well, we've been doing it, what, 35 years, Stuart?
36 this
36,
July.
yeah. And I've been in the band, I say, for over 20 now, and it must get for some people, it must just get, because it's not like we're we're world famous, jetting around the world and doing what we want. We've still got to find ways of making an income out of all of this. Right. And it isn't easy. It sure isn't easy. And I think there are probably some people just eventually get a bit despondent and move on. So in comes a new guitarist or a new bass player, whatever it might be. And I mean, that happened to me. Of course, there was the band were based locally to where I live. And I just heard through the local recording studio that their keyboard player was leaving. I think he was moving to Australia, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Carl was moving to Australia, so they needed a keyboard player, and I just had to try and wing it and pretend that I understood what they were talking about with progressive rock. I guess I did. I mean, I knew of Marillion. Garden Party was the first thing I heard of Marillion. I went out. I remember buying the Garden Party single. Genesis. My introduction to Genesis when I was in my teens was Invisible Touch. And all of that sort of type of, and what's the other? The Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes. I mean, that they were my introductions from the 80s. And I remember my cousin Alan was absolutely mad on that period of prog rock, but I never knew it was called prog. I didn't realize it was prog rock, and I'm sure that prog rock fans don't think it's prog rock either. Trevor Horn getting involved.
No, yeah. I do hear a lot of people, on Facebook, that they're only 1979 is the last year that they'll ever listen to anything that's rock.
Yeah.
They don't think anything after that matters. And it's like, but I try to tell some people, it's like, oh, you're missing out on a lot of stuff, because I mean, yes, there's a lot of it's a little more mainstream, if that's a good enough word to use. It's a little more song structures, but it's like, it's a new era. 1980, even a little bit further than that, like around, I want to say 77, 78, you start hearing differences in music styles that doesn't set bands in those at that time aren't sounding like they did in the early 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that, that so-called new wave, you can hear its roots around 1974, 75 with like Roxy Music, for example. I mean, they don't sound like they're from the 70s once they get to around 73, 74. They don't, it sounds like the 80s, So it's like bands like them, they were thinking, it's like, we're not going to sound, all, the other thing too, I noticed is those type of bands, their mixes, everything was a little more modern, for that time period, because a lot of times drummers were always way back in the mix. And and sometimes even bass players and keyboard players were back in the mix. They, they were always concentrating on the singer and the guitar player, and it was nice to hear. Okay, here's bands like Roxy Music, and I can't think of other ones that I got into later on. Bebop Deluxe. I mean, they didn't sound like the 70s. It's like they had, especially towards the end of their career, it sounded more, it sounded more new wave than anything.
Yeah.
So
there's
it's
an
like,
awful lot of bands where there were certain things I was listening to in my teens, and I didn't realize that they were progressive arrangements. And bands like OMD were really progressive. There's a lot of the, maybe not the singles, but the album tracks from Howard Jones. He was a massive Emerson, Lake and Palmer fan, and you can hear it.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, and you can hear it in a lot of the album tracks. But of course, the record companies were releasing the singles. They were releasing the pop. But behind all of that, there was an awful lot of progressive. I mean, I do remember a time when we were sort of, be careful about saying prog, because prog's not cool.
right.
There was that, and then like NME, the music press, were all very much like, oh no, keep away from all that sort of music. And then you get bands come along like Muse, who are totally prog. They just don't admit it.
But that, of course, that was much later on, wasn't it? A couple of decades later, when anything goes, it didn't matter. And when we started, prog was a bit like going into a newsagent and buying porn. You had to put it in a little brown paper bag. You couldn't tell anybody.
Right. Yeah,
Oh no, not the prog. Whoa. And that's how we felt initially. And in fact, later on, we felt kind of, I don't know, it's been so much better in the last sort of 20 years, especially since Dean's been in the band to a certain extent, although I don't know if it's the reason, but but it's like these days, I think it's much easier because anything goes, and even younger people don't judge so much. They just like what they like. They tend to pick and choose lots of different types of music because of the way that we sort of absorb it these days, and which I think is great. Whereas in the 80s, we really were castigated. We were a local band in the 80s, but we weren't in our area, and we weren't really part of the local scene that much because I think people sort of, I don't know, had a sort of prejudice against us a bit because we were the local prog band, the band with 3 eyes or something. It's all a bit weird. As opposed to the trendy new wave band or the trendy punk band, or do you know what I mean? Or a heavy rock band, for example. We were very unusual. In fact, when we started, we didn't really know of any other bands doing what we were doing. And Roy formed the band when he did in the early to mid 80s, basically because no other bands were doing what he wanted to listen to. So that's when we started. And of course, originally we were quite generic. And then we realized there were other bands, although they weren't local, such as who you mentioned earlier, Pendragon, IQ, Palace, Solstice, Haze, various other bands, Jadis, for example. And of course, the big one was Marillion. And we thought, there is a bit of a scene here, although it's not really a scene because everyone's disjointed and nobody really knows each other that well. But gradually, everyone came together and it created this kind of scene. And you had like the Classic Rock Society in Rotherham in the north of England who kind of brought all these bands together. And then later on, for example, Rossfest and all the various, organizations in the States that started doing festivals.
Oh, yes.
And of course, it brought all these musicians together, So, and we know a lot more people within the genre now. And of course, I think things like Facebook have helped and social media because it's easier to get hold of people and keep in touch with people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how I've been keeping in touch with you and countless others that I've found along the way, when I first got onto Facebook in 2005, 2006, because I used to be, to get all my prog information, there was this one website called progressiveears.com.
I know, yeah.
And they used to have that, and they were the ones that I was really glad when they had their site went down for a little bit. And so a friend of mine told me, he said, come on over to Facebook. We can chat over there. And I just noticed how a lot of the people from that Progressive Ears, they migrated over to Facebook until their site was fixed. But on their site is where I encountered more of the snobs, that the ones that nothing after 1979 or, oh, they're not prog, they sound like a watered down version of it. It's like, I don't see it as that. I just see it's the next step. I mean, the 70s had their sound, the 80s
you can't win
sound.
with some people, Ron. You can't win with some people. I mean, basically, if you try doing something modern and bring it screaming and kicking into the 2000s as it is now, whatever, you're bound to get people saying, oh, it doesn't sound like Genesis, it doesn't sound like prog. And yet if you don't do that, other people will say, oh, they sound a bit too generic. So you can't win at the end of the day. So right. I think basically you just have to do what's in your heart. I mean, we basically do what we do because we want to do it. There's no rhyme or reason. I think we just, lately me and Dean have been doing a lot of kind of lockdown music. And I wouldn't say it was prog, although obviously it's got my voice and there's Dean's keyboard. So there is a crossover there, but we just kind of do what we do. And and with me in the past, it just happened to be more progressive because that's the music I was kind of into in the late 70s onwards, basically, more than anything else. So it's reflected in the writing and the band. And of course, because Roy was basically into prog and very little else, that's one reason why we sounded like we did, in the early years.
I do remember when I first, the first album I was involved with was Following Ghosts. And it was very much a band decision on some of the keyboard elements within the album. But I certainly was slightly concerned that people would blame me for it. There were certain parts of some break beats. There was a little drum and bass break beat. That was actually Neil. That was actually Neil's idea. Same with Ocean Blue. He put that track together. But I think being the new boy, I was concerned that I was going to take a little bit of the blame for maybe things up, songs people didn't like. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. We are very much a democracy.
I just got, I guess that the reissue of Following Ghosts, I want to say about a little bit after you guys released it, because I didn't, I haven't really in the past few years haven't really been following the scene as deeply as I did in the early 2000s. So it's like there's a lot of stuff that I had missed, and so it's like trying to go back and find things that I've missed and to fill in the empty spots in different band catalogs. Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 releases that you guys done that I still need to, to fill in, is the was one that you guys had just recently. You guys did the Galahad Electric Company. Is that one?
When the battle's over, that's
that's
the end of last
I
year.
didn't even, that was one, and then there was one that was right. It was before Sea of Change.
Beyond the Realms of Euphoria, maybe.
No, Quiet Storms. Quiet
Storms. Yeah.
That's one that I missed because I for some reason it just went completely under the radar.
But it was it's more of a gentle album. It's more kind of acoustic and more laid back.
Yeah, it was a low key. It was a low key release as well as a low key sounding album, wasn't it?
It
really
was.
I think we hadn't released something for a while, and we just happened to have a lot of material to get out there, and it just made perfect sense. I think, didn't it, really, to release that album. It's a difficult one because it's not necessarily a proper Galahad album. It's almost like a side one, but we're all involved. Everyone from Galahad's involved in it. So it's a Galahad album.
Well, it's nice that you guys do something, you know, 'cause what was it? It's like I was reading it. There was another one in the earlier days that you had. It was it was Galahad, and then it had a name.
There was a Galahad acoustic quintet album.
That's the one. I think what was that? Wasn't that one that you guys did for the Classic Rock Society? You know,
we did a live album with the Classic Rock Society.
Yeah, I found out about that later on because I did subscribe to the, you know, that I think they had a little monthly or bi-monthly
they had a magazine,
magazine, and I got it, and then you know, of course, the price differences, you know, between the dollar and the pound, you know, it's like, you know, fluctuated so much during that. It's like I could afford it at one time, and then it just got too much, and I was like, it's like I want this, but it's like it's going to cost me so much more. And but it was, and again, it was like a nice look into what was going on, you know, in England, you know, to see, oh, these are, you know, there's not just these bands, there's more, and there's, you know, it just makes it, you know, a great way for people outside of your country to know what kind of, you know, what the prog scene is in your country, because in the United States, it's, I heard that it was really non-existent for a long time. I mean, you know, bands like Kansas, they stopped really being progressive in the early 80s. So it's like, and then a lot of the bands, you know, that were from the 70s just, you know, disbanded, you know. So it's like we really didn't have, it was more underground that we of prog scene in the United States. I found later on there's one band, I don't even know where they're from, but a band called Netherworld, and they actually sound like they could have come out of the British prog scene. They didn't sound anything like what was in, you know, an American prog, you know. So it's like, so it was like the 80s were very like a wasteland, you know.
And then Dream Theater turned up.
Oh yeah. When they, actually, yeah, they're the ones that kind of really kick-started it. In, you know, I remember having their first cassette when Days and Dream Unite.
When Dream and Day Unite.
Yeah, with the different, you know, they had a different vocalist, and I got that cassette. I was like going, oh wow, because at that time in the mid '80s, I was kind of more into that thrash metal sound, you know, Metallica, Megadeth, you know, that sound. So I was like going, oh well, hey, these guys are combining that, but with something different. So it's like, you know,
it's like Rush on Speed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When you hear it, it really is. It's like, and it really wasn't until when I was working at a record store. This is a story I always go back to, so you know, people know the root. You know, kind of my musical epiphany happened at a record store. The manager was getting tired of me and this other guy always putting in the Metallicas and the Slayers into the store music system. So he's like, okay, he says, I got something for you because I'm really getting tired of your music. And he went and he said, this is something, he said, that's going to appeal to you. I said, okay. You know, I was like going, it's like, yeah, right, whatever. And he put in King Crimson Red.
All right.
And all of a sudden, you know, like in the cartoons, that big light bulb goes off over your head. And I was like going, this is what I was looking for.
Yeah,
the
and of course that
longest
featured
time.
our mate John Wetton, who lives or used, who did, obviously he's passed sadly now,
Yeah.
but of course he lived just down the road from us. He was from our area, from
Wow.
yeah, he lived about 5 or 6 miles away.
That's amazing. Yeah,
He's on New
I saw.
Zealand.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, remember that. I was looking at in the credits. I was like, going, oh wow, that's so cool that they got John Wetton, because he was one of my favorite singers and bass players. I mean, just he had this. I don't know, for some reason, especially when in King Crimson and then UK, and then even in Asia, he had, I don't know, just like kind of a cool. He was like a cool guy, just the way he just stand there and playing his bass like almost like effortlessly while he's singing. And it's like it was one of the few times I ever saw someone that was, they playing their instrument and then singing. It's like sometimes they get a little distracted by one or the other. And I got to see John at one of the prog fests in 1997 when Martin Orford was his keyboardist.
Yeah, I know Martin. Yeah, he doesn't live that far away either. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I got to see, that was the first time I got to see, one of my musical heroes. And so it's like, but, like I said, King Crimson Red was like the real true starting point where it's like all of a sudden the radar was on. And, of course I had to get all the Crimson CDs that were out at the time. And I got to see them live in their, was it that double trio that they had?
Oh yeah.
Which was, I should have packed the earplugs for that one, because that was loud.
Certainly a racket.
Yeah, I was in some kind of a theater like this, in downtown LA, and I think I was seated like right about there, and all of a sudden the music right in my face, and I'm like, oh, I should have worn earplugs, because I'd seen loud concerts before, and I always packed that, but I wasn't expecting them to be that loud. And well, nowadays with the way people are mixing their the live albums, and when you hear, when you're in a concert, with wherever, if it's a small theater or a bigger arena, you're hearing that when they sound check the drums and the bass, and all of a sudden it's like, you actually, your ears start fluttering, and you kind of feel the power from the stage, whereas, like in the 70s, I mean, now when they're remixing it and remastering it, that you can hear they're bringing it up, in the mix, so you can actually hear those things. But it was just amazing, the power. It's like, just like even in studio, there's studio albums, when I always listen to it on the headphones, so it's like, so I can get the full sound, because I really think unless you have a stereo system where you have the four speakers and maybe a subwoofer.
Yeah, that's what I've got here.
You're not gonna hear it if you only got 2 speakers. You're not gonna hear the full sound. So it's like, I always like listening to it on the headphones, so I can get that full sound. And it's like, and then in my car, I put in, I put like the CDs onto a little thumb drive, and I have the USB port, and I can put it in there, so I can, because it's always so difficult bringing in a big stack of CDs into your car. For me, it's more of I'm afraid of someone's going to look in and, oh, actually, I know that band, so I'm going to break in and take your CDs. And it's like, so at least with the thumb drive, you can put on a massive amount, music on there.
Yeah, that's what I have to do. I get a bit worried about technology because I just recently, last year, I bought a new car and there's no CD player. There's not even an option for me to have a CD player in the car.
Oh my God.
And so what do I do? So the idea is to stream. So you're left with, I don't know, Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, whatever it might be, or a thumb drive, like you say.
Right.
I've just recently been sent a CD and I can't play it. It's just can't. So I'm going to have to, luckily my laptop, my MacBooks, I've got one of the older MacBooks with a CD drive. So I'm going to have to pop it in there. I'm going to have to rip it to file, put that onto a USB stick, and then take that into the car so I can listen to it. It worries me with the technology that it's becoming like that.
Right. And especially with the, going to physical media, it's like, I am one of these people that I have to buy the CD. I'll buy the digital download if that's all that it's going to be available. But I really prefer having the physical media in my hand, especially to look at the liner notes.
It feels like you've got something proper if you've got either a CD or a record or something. You've got a product, you've got something you can touch and feel and put it on. And it's like when it's in the ether, it's not quite the same. And especially when you're a band and you've spent all that time and all those hours, recording this creative stuff that you're doing, and then it's just sort of out there somewhere. It's not actually in a physical state. It never feels quite right to me if it isn't in a physical state of some sort. That's only obviously my personal preference because I've grown up with that. But I'm sure the younger generation don't care about that. So
no, they don't. They only want the song. And I, like I asked a friend of mine, I said, okay, now you as a band only put out a digital, your new album only digitally. Is that technically no longer an album and should be called a collection of songs? Because, because digitally you can make an album 5 hours long if you wanted to.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think that's no longer an album because you've gone beyond the 79 point something minute mark, on your, and it's like, I don't know. I just like the idea of the physical media. And I think it's like you're saying, the younger generations look at a CD and they look, like, what's that? Kind of, I guess,
yeah.
I mean, I've seen now some people are thinking of bringing back the cassette, and it's like I think I always hated the cassettes because
well, the quality is terrible. Basically, I've got a cassette player upstairs. I've got a retro room upstairs with a cassette player and a CD and a record deck and an old amp. But purely because I've got loads of cassettes, so I play them occasionally, and they don't sound particularly good, to be honest. But my latest CD player has got a pen drive as well, so I can play thumb drives in my CD player.
That's amazing.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, on my Blu-ray player, it has the USB port. So
yeah, mine's got it. I haven't used it yet, but mine's got it on there. I don't know quite what it does, whether it's like for movies or what. I don't know. I've never tried it.
That's what I found a bunch of really low quality movies on YouTube and downloaded them and put, because they're not even, they were only on VHS as a physical media. They never made it to DVD or Blu-ray. So it's like, that was like the only way you can see it is because someone ripped their VHS copy up onto YouTube. And I got a program to download it because you know how things are there on YouTube today and they're gone tomorrow, for whatever, licensing reasons mainly. So I just, and then I tried with the thumb drive, put a couple movies on there, and it was just kind of the weirdest experience to watch the movies off of this thumb drive. And it's like, I mean, they were like the screen, picture quality was like basically the old VHS where you had the little lines at the top and the bottom going, and then every once in a while, it's like,
oh, you get the line coming down.
yeah, coming down, or they have like a little seizure where it's like it goes boom, and it's like, but
that was a little bit of the magic as well, though. It's funny. I was watching an interview recently with Moby, and he was saying that he's gone back to listening to vinyl, and this is from a couple of years ago. And during that time of playing the record, he would turn his phone off. He wouldn't do anything. He'd just sit down and play side A. When that's finished, turn it over and play side B. Listen to it in its entirety. And what you were saying about earlier on about a collection of songs, I know from our experience, we spend a lot of time, we put a lot of thought in to the track order.
Sequencing, yeah.
Yeah, and you'll have an introduction. You might have an intermission. You might have an outro of the whole album. And when they're all fragmented into individual audio files all of a sudden, you know damn well that people are skipping the intro. They're skipping the middle instrumental. Back in 2018, I released a solo album, and there's a whole backstory. There's a whole reason why I made that album.
Ron, it's really good.
Yeah, and it's
Constellation.
all based around listening to or watching as well. Blade Runner, Vangelis, and there's Jean-Michel Jarre, and the whole album was put together for a particular reason. And the track order, I've absolutely spent so much time on the track order, and now it'll just be for people to play individual songs on Spotify if they want.
Right, yeah.
But you need to have the album. You need to read what I've written inside the sleeve notes, why the album's been put together, how it's been put together. But there's a whole point to the whole thing, the whole project. And that's all completely negated when it's gone on to Spotify.
Yeah, and then also, of course, Spotify, they're kind of like the evil empire that they don't pay you guys. I mean, I think they pay you guys pennies on the dollar.
It's about 0.0008p per stream, roughly.
And it's like,
so in order to make a tenner, you got to stream it about 10,000 times or something. It's not a lot, it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, and those companies are the ones that are making the money, and they're, I mean, if they would follow the way like Netflix and stuff like that, where they, they're paying for these things. They're not just taking them for whatever their source. And but then I think at the same time is things like Spotify help bring in fans.
I see it as a kind of marketing tool in a way. It's a way of getting out there. That's the only way I can justify it, because in terms of an income stream, it's outrageous. So, but in terms of getting your name out there, it's good. But, it's a balance between the two. I mean, in the old days, you got paid. If you played on the radio, national radio, you got paid for that, and we did a session for Radio 1 in the UK, BBC Radio 1, back in the early 90s. And I was well chuffed. It was the first time we'd ever been paid. We were paid to go in the studio and record it, which I couldn't believe, because normally it cost us an arm and a leg to go to the studio and record it. So they paid us for the session, which is, wow, for a 24, 5-year-old, it's like, this is amazing. We're getting paid to record at the BBC. And then when the session went out, we got royalties. And I think it worked out about £35 for every 3 minutes we got paid. We got played. So that was pretty good. Imagine that if that was hundreds of times or thousands of times on a national radio station, you'd be raking it.
That's why songs are 20 minutes long. Get
So,
the most
that's-
out of it.
So we had Room 801 played. It made us 100 quid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
30 years
like,
ago.
I mean, the places that honestly, the only thing that I have, is music streaming is the Amazon Music. Only because on certain CDs that you buy, they give you an MP3 album of it that they put on their
Yeah.
music site.
Sorry, guys. I've
So
just got to
that's-
go to the little boys' room. I won't be a sec.
All right.
Yeah, that is the good thing about Amazon. Whenever you purchase a CD, they immediately put it onto your account, don't they? Which is
Oh yeah,
is a good idea.
yeah. I mean and then you can go in there and explore more. And it's like I use those kind of sites and also YouTube as a way if someone tells me of a band and
Yeah.
okay, and sometimes I have friends that are just too lazy to give me a link to it, so I have to go do all the work. And
Yeah.
I find them, and it's like, okay, now I can hear. I like what they sound like, so I'm gonna go look for their CD. I'm not gonna. The streaming is not gonna be my primary source of how I listen to music. It's like I just use it as a way to kind of test drive it and see if it's
Yeah.
something that's something to my liking, and if I do, it's like I buy it, and then of course going down a rabbit hole. If the band has more than one CD, you got to get that, and then the keyboard player or the guitar player did a solo album. Oh, gotta go and find it. It's
That's the
like
great thing, isn't it? Yeah, I think with
you get
YouTube in particular, that whole thing with YouTube, the way it keeps directing you to new material based around what you're already looking at.
There you go. It's your album,
Yay!
Dean.
oh, okay.
Dean
Yeah,
in
that's-
light, or rather on yellow. That's Dean's solo album, Constellations.
Oh, okay. Well, there's like I was just telling Dean, it's like you find out, the different members of the band have solo albums, so you got to go investigate them, and then it's like
Yeah, I'm on that as well, and so's Lee's on that as
If I
well.
would have known you were doing it, we could have said, and now we're going to a commercial break.
Yeah. And then that's the one that we did it later last year. That's our lockdown album, When the Battle Is Over.
Oh yeah, I just saw advertising when I was looking to see what other Galahad CDs were on Amazon, and then I think that was one of the top choices because I have it set for the latest release of something, whether it's music or CD or movies. I have it. I want to know what the latest thing that's been released. So it's like, oh, there's another one. There's it's like
Yeah.
I find different,
Yeah.
like I think the earliest of Galahad that I have on CD is Sleepers.
Oh, okay. You haven't
Uh,
got the first two then. You haven't got when we were
No.
more kind of generic back in the early days. In a moment of madness and nothing is written.
You're selling it really well, Stu. You mean
Yeah.
those groundbreaking first two albums?
There you go.
We were very
Or
young
the
in those
generic.
days. In fact, when we first started doing the first album, I think 3 of the band were teenagers. So we were, amazingly, unlike now, we were incredibly young at the time, which is a bizarre thing for a prog band because no one thinks that prog bands are young anymore because they're not, most of them. But
Right.
3 of our members, I mean, Spence and Tim and Mark, were all teenagers, which is quite a thing
Right.
for then,
Well, speaking of that, young, years ago, I got contacted through Facebook to review this one young band in Los Angeles called The Sword, and between the ages of 15 and 17. And they
Oh,
were
right.
playing on levels of guitarist had almost the Steve Howe vibe down perfectly.
Wow.
And what he did was something I thought was very unique for a young band to do, is not only did they use those people as their influences, they found out who influenced them. So
Yeah.
they went back to the beginning. So it sounded like, okay, their music sounded like it. Here was, I think it was in 2010. No, it was earlier than that. And it sounded like it was 1972. I mean, it was like they just went for that whole vibe. And it's like, and they were like the ages of 15 to 17.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's like, you get that. And it's like, wait a second. And I found out what it was is their father was really into progressive rock. So he kind of like, it was in his DNA. So passed it down to his son, and his son was like the keyboard player and also did the singing. And he had like that kind of falsetto that John Anderson had, even though he sounded different than that, but he had that, it was in that range.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he was classically trained, so it's like, I guess this is when parenting done right, as they say. And so you get that rare occasion where there's young people introduced into progressive rock that want to play progressive rock.
Yeah. Yeah. But when Spence joined us, he was 16, and our drummer. And when he played his first gig, we had to get permission from the night, because it was a big nightclub in Bournemouth called the Academy. And because they had a license, an alcohol license, we actually had to get special permission for him to play on the stage because he was too young.
I've heard a couple of stories like that, where they sneak in the one that's underage, I could just picture it now, to try to convince the doorman or the bouncer, as they call them, put one of them plastic mustaches on. It's like, oh yeah, I'm holding up, I got a mustache.
Yeah. Well, there's a local club, or there was a local club called Mr. C's in Poole, where we come from, near where we come from. In the 80s, we used to play there once or twice a month on the evenings when they had live bands. But occasionally I used to go clubbing with friends, and they had a club night as well. And we used to play there all the time. And I went there on a club night, and they wouldn't let me in because they thought I was underage. And I said, yeah, but I know Alex, the manager. We play here every Saturday night or Sunday night or whatever, And so, yeah, it was amazing. I actually struggled to get into a place that I knew really well because it was a different night, because it was a club night as opposed to a rock night. So it was strange. I said,
I bet you wish you had that problem now.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, ban me.
Yeah.
Am I looking young?
Oh yeah.
How time flies.
Oh, I know. It's like, honestly, I got to tell you, it's like, I'm going to be in less than a week, I'm going to be 55, but I have no idea what that's supposed to feel like. I didn't even know what 50 was supposed, it's like, I look at all these numbers, like, I mean, my body may look like it's 55, but inside it's like, I'm still like that 18, 19-year-old that, it's like,
yeah.
Just
you don't realize that until you get to that age. And when you're not that age, you think, oh, you're an old bugger. Then you realize, actually, you just feel the same. Just a bit more tired.
Well, I had a friend of mine ask, so how do you picture yourself when you're going to be a senior citizen, an old, like in the 70s or 80s? And I go, well, I know I'm going to be that crotchety old man that's going to be on a porch yelling at the kids going, back and forth in their yard, while I'll have a boombox and I'm going to be playing, Slayer. And it's like, it's going to be like, the kids are like, what is that noise? And it's like, yeah, that's what our parents said. What is that noise? And it's like the kids are going, what is that noise? Because nowadays it's like the music that they listen to, for the most part, almost all sounds the same.
Everything's got very generic these days, isn't it? Everything's kind of very nice, and it's almost like there's not a lot of, I don't know.
Isn't
on
that
the
what our
main,
parents used to say?
oh yes, on the mainstream, it's like I don't know. It's like I mean, there's a lot of great music out there. Generally, there's loads of different types and whatever. But unfortunately, the music that seems to get to the mass media and on the radio stations, it's kind of all very safe these days. There's too many rules and regulations, and like, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. It's just I don't know. I just find it, and it's all very singer-songwriter orientated these days. And I think that's something that's a conscious decision by record companies, because singer-songwriters are a lot easier and cheaper to pay for than bands, and they're a lot easier to take on tour. And I think that's, and I read something, an interesting article the other day about how a lot of the charts these days, it's just, guys and girls singing songs and that's it. And bands just aren't really the in thing at the moment, which is a real shame.
Well, a lot of it also sounds very manufactured, like, like a paint by numbers thing. It's like, okay, well, here's where we're going to do a lot of bass and drum sounds, and then here we're going to do a lot of this keyboard sound, and it's like, and they just get that what do you call it, that little area of what they do, and then just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until they get to the 3 or 4 minute mark, and then they get these vocals that they put on that are obviously they're so perfect because they run them through processors and everything.
We'd never do that. We'd never do that.
The auto tune, it's like where, so, you got this, the people that sing in the showers, all of a sudden they can go and get that program on their, their PC or their Mac or whatever, and they could put their lousy voice in, and all of a sudden here comes this perfect, pristine voice coming out, and it's like,
that's what Dean does to me.
I think it's really important with this technology to know how to use it, because you hear so many attempts at, when people think, oh yeah, you can put things through auto tune and all that. Well, you can to a degree, but if you can't sing in the first place, it won't ever work.
Right.
And I think that's quite. I think that's quite an important part. I don't have a button on here for like making it sound perfect. You've still got to work to make it sound perfect. There isn't a talent button, or there isn't a a write a hit button.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I understand on vocals, when you do effects to it, that's that's kind of just giving just a little extra to, like you were saying, their talent. Their talent's got to be there, and and I got to say, and I don't want to sound the wrong way, but it's like when I hear Stuart sing, I can hear every emotion that's coming out of his vocals. And it's like, it's like when I hear the songs, it's like, like on some of the heavier ones that you've done on Empires Never Last. I mean, I don't remember the full title, but the one, God.
Could be God, maybe.
I Could Be God. That one, I was like going, wow. That honestly, when I first heard that, I had a lot of the shivers on the back and the hair standing up. I was like, it's like when you said that, it's, singing that, and then it's like it wasn't like softly saying it. It was like you were like putting it right, like saying, I am, you know, it's not, it's almost like it's not, I could be, it's like, I am, you know, and it's like, you know,
I remember that
beforehand,
session well.
It is.
Yeah,
It's all
and,
about singing it with the emotion and the performance. It's all about living that moment, isn't it? And and I've got to say, I think that's a great example of one of Stuart's really good lyrics. I think that one. That's a really good performance on "I Could Be God."
That's one of my favorites, you know, and it's like so it's like whenever I listen to that, even though it's been many times that now that I've listened to it, I still get that same reaction. You know, the hairs on the back of my neck start popping up, and it's like, and so I think that that's probably what Stuart's intentions were when he sang those lyrics. You know, and but if you get a new singer that's it's, you know, on a mainstream, they probably won't be able to do that because they're not allowed. They wouldn't be allowed by the record label or the record company to do that. They said, no, that is going outside of our box of, you know, our safety box, if you will. And we can't have people doing that. You know, we could have powerful vocals, but we can't have vocals that are gonna have that effect. And that's, you know, and
I
plus
think
also
with "I Could Be God" as well. If you remember, Stuart, we spent a lot of time on that track as well. That evolved to something quite different from its original version.
It took a long time to get that to work.
The chorus, in particular, the chorus was written months after the rest of the song was written, and we were already like rehearsing. I think we even played it live, possibly with a different chorus, until we eventually got somewhere with it. And then you got other songs like "This Life Could Be My Last," which was literally written in minutes, wasn't it? It was one of those things which just came together so quick.
That's the other one that has that feeling too. You know, I get that the hair on the back of the neck sticking up when I hear that one, because it's like, you know, it's like the emotion that you put into those vocals. It's like, I mean, you haven't really heard that kind of styling for a long time, because a lot of the, you know, we'll go back to that word, neo-prog bands that are still coming out, they're trying to emulate, it's like one of the two people, Peter Gabriel or John Anderson. You know, they try to make their vocals in that realm, and because it's almost like they're forcing their vocals to do that, their emotion is not going to come out of their voice. It's because it's just not going to work. It's like,
you've got to do what comes natural, without a doubt, haven't you? I'm a frustrated guitarist. I'd love to be able to play guitar. I can play guitar chords and a few little bits, but I'm certainly not a guitarist. And I'd love to be a guitarist, but you have to, some point, you have to think, hold on, what am I good at, or what am I least worst at?
Right.
and actually work to your strengths, which I think is brings us right back to the beginning of our conversation earlier, which is I had to have that same learning curve when I joined Galahad of trying to find out what prog was all about.
Right. And
I very quickly realized that wasn't me. I might like an awful lot of the old prog stuff. I was quite surprised actually on so many levels on how great a lot of the music was. In particular for me, it was Pink Floyd, funny enough. But it's not me. It's not my style of keyboard playing. So I had to go with what feels natural for me and what works for me. And I think Stuart's the same. Stuart has to sing as Stuart Nicholson. Not
you find your own voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in the early days, maybe I did, because I was young and obviously you're influenced by your surroundings. I did sort of do the old Gabriel thing a bit and all the makeup and everything else, and and fish thing to a certain extent. But I
Right.
think as you get older and you take it more seriously, like we did, because it was just fun in the early days. We weren't really that serious about it. It was just, we were just having a laugh, really.
Right.
And then we played with the likes of Pendragon and IQ and Magnum, actually, we played. And we thought, actually, we can compete with these guys, I think. You know, we stand a good chance here, because we felt that we could, you know, maybe naively, I don't know, but we felt that we could kind of match them or compete with them or whatever. So that's when we
Right.
started taking it more seriously. And as time went on, you just literally find your own voice. You know, and I do, as I think Dean will attest to this, I just do what I do, and it works. And Dean does what he does for the band, and luckily we're quite an open-minded band. In other words, we're kind of progressive in the true sense, because we soak up all sorts of different references, you know, whether it be classic prog, which could be in the center, or, you know, the heavy stuff. For example, me and Dean are very big fans of, for example, Rammstein, or dance music, you know, things like, I love Left Field, and I used to love bands like Portishead, and, you know, and I think there's a whole raft of influences within the Galahad music these days. And a lot of those influences didn't even exist when we started, you know, because so much has changed over the years. And
Exactly.
and I think we view ourselves really, I mean, we go along with the prog thing, you know, with the various prog societies and magazines, because it's convenient, because that's our background. But I think in reality, we're just kind of we're just a band, really, and we'll do whatever we kind of feel like. And it does come within the kind of prog remit in the true sense, I think, because we're always trying to do different things.
Yeah,
So
I think you can't expect other people to be into your music if your own music, your own creation isn't turning you on yourself. If your own creation is turning you on, then you'd like to hope that it will for other people. But if you don't believe in it, you've got no chance of other people then believing in it or taking it seriously.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's such a good point.
And each, you know, I look for, whenever I find out that you guys have a new album, and, you know, it's like I look forward to getting it, and it's like, and then when you guys do, you know, like the reissues, like the Following Ghosts, it's nice to get a, you know, it's like, okay, I can get a glimpse into their past. Oh, and so that's what I do like a lot of that. Like my recent thing, a totally different band, but I got this thing from Frost.
Oh, I know Frost. Yeah, Jem Godfrey.
Yeah, this 8 CD thing, and honestly, I thought it was going to be the size of one of these.
Yeah.
But then it's like I couldn't believe that. I was like going.
So are all the discs all they're not stacked?
Yeah, there's 4. Yeah, they have 4 on the inner cover, and then the other 4 on the back cover. You know, and it's like the time and the money and the effort went into something.
In fact, like Paul, I think you'll find that Paul Tippett did the artwork, who does our artwork.
Oh,
Paul Tippett, who does the artwork for our albums, I think he did the artwork for that Frost album.
Yeah,
it's like,
all of their stuff.
Yeah.
It's just amazing that how, you know, I hear and see bands doing, you know, reissues of CDs, whether it's in box sets or whatnot, and then I hear some bands that say we can't even get our old stuff sold. You know, a friend of mine's band, he had a stack of maybe about 100 CDs of something that they put out in 1992, and he says it's in my garage. It's in a box, and it's like he says it just tells me that if I'm going to reissue this, it's only going to be digital, because I can't afford to sit on
stock,
all that stock for, you know, decades. So I think it just really, I think a lot of it has to do with how how bands market themselves and how they put themselves out enough where they have a core fan base that's gonna, follow them to the ends of the earth, or you just got casual fans, that just, they wait for that single to come out, like you were saying earlier, that's all they interested in is in that single, and that's it,
Well, we're lucky because we've been going so long that over the years, I've just built up a massive mailing list. And I've got a massive manual mailing list that I've had for many, many years on email, but I've also got a mailing list on our website as well. So when people join the website, they can put their email addresses in, and it does help. And when we release an album, we do like a pre-release, and we normally sell out the first pressing purely on the mailing lists and a little bit of publicity on Facebook or whatever. And that's all we do. I mean, in the early days, I used to send out, it scares me now, but we would send out 150 CDs, to various magazines, and this back in the 80s and back in the 90s and early 2000s when we didn't have the internet, because it was the only way of getting out there. But I mean, for example, the last album that me and Dean did, When the Battle Is Over, I think I sent out 4 promos. That was it, actual physical promos.
Right.
So, because we didn't really need to, and we pretty much sold out of our pressing, because it's a limited edition anyway, pretty much within a couple of months or so. So, and I think that's the key. And you always sell your most amount of CDs within the first month or two. And then after that, it just tapers off, basically.
Right. Yeah. Because when I first started doing, my website, prognaut.com, I started in 2001.
No, I remember. No, of course. Yes, I remember you getting into it.
Yeah, and that's when I got the year 0 from you guys, and I remember I used to get like on average maybe about 20 CDs a week from bands from all over the globe, and it was just like it kept on building to the point, I think around 2008, 2009, I believe it was. Yeah. No, it was earlier than that. I got more because the artist Ed Unitsky, the guy that did the Flower Kings
he
artwork.
did the artwork for Rossfest, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, and he sent in an email, a big attachment. I don't know why he did it, but he sent me a logo for Prognaut. When I swear, when I put that up onto the website, that's when I think I jumped, because it's like I got put in with his the artwork that he does. So it's like I was part of that little family, so to speak. And everything went perfect up until 2015. When I had a, not to go downer, but I had what they call a mini stroke, and after that, my concentration level was diminished, and I couldn't really do anything. And so I just decided, like on April 2016, I just basically said, problem not done. So I had a good 15-year run with that, and I'm still trying to get the website to look more now 2021 than 2001. It's really because I did at that time, I did all the HTML coding by hand. I didn't input it into a program to have it format the page. I was doing it myself, so it was taking a long time to do that. And just doing, I would review the CD, but then afterwards I would have to go in and put all the link information, the album cover on the page, then at the bottom, if I did more than one CD from them, I'd have to individually put down the links to the other ones because, you know,
A lot of work.
ultimately, yeah. And ultimately, I want to get it where everything is, you know, nice little cross reference, you know, where, you know, it's like if, you know, like when the Galahad stuff is up there, that it'll tell me about all the other projects that, you know, were involved with Galahad, solos or, you know, the side projects and things like that. And I know that's going to take a lot of money to do. And so it's like, probably do one of those GoFundMe pages or something like that to get, you know, because I have a lot of people that's like what I did. And for those people, you know, I think I owe them that to make the site look as modern as possible.
Tommy.
And
I think the cat's playing up.
uh-oh. Yeah, my cat on the other side of the door, if I come into this room, she just starts meowing.
Sorry, the cat's going a bit crazy.
Uh-oh. Is it the cat's
And
gonna
mine's
do?
been fast asleep for the whole thing. She's laid down there asleep. So
Oh, you know, I got exposed to and got a lot of promos over the years, and then I believe it was like in, I want to say 2010, 2011, when digital stuff was starting to be available for bands to send out their promos of their albums, and then I would get barraged like maybe 100 a week of people from all over the world. Here's my digital album. Listen to it. You know, it's like I don't have time because I got all these CDs to listen to. You know, and it's like, and then I had one that was so almost getting angry with me because I didn't want to review his digital CD, and I explained to him. I said, "Look, I have right now about 50 CDs that are in front of you. So, you know, the one that I got first is first come, first served. So it's like, then also too, towards the end, I really got tired of, it was more of like the publicity agents and record labels were putting deadlines on when, you know, and it's like, well, wait a second. I'm not being paid to do this. This is a labor of love, you know. It's like the review is going to get done when it gets done because, you know, it's like you don't want, you know, the band, you guys don't want to be rushed into putting it, you know, you got to put on an album this summer, you know, you don't want to be rushed into it. So it's, you know, because it's, you know, you might have an inferior product. So if I get rushed into doing a review, chances are you're not going to get a good review because I'm going to be too rushed into it and I'm not going to be able to get all the information from your music into my head that I can talk about it. And
I couldn't imagine what the stress must be like when it's like that. That must be terrible, really.
I mean,
something which is a love, a music.
I do,
love,
you know, and I do understand that, you know, bands need, I mean, especially if they're not on a major label, they need press out there as soon as they can to bring in the fans. You know, so at that, I understand their, you know, the band's reasoning, you know, and it's like, and occasionally I did get like pre-releases of, you know, maybe like a few months in advance of the actual release date. And that's when, okay, now you gave me some time. I'll get that review out, and it'll be before you know the release date, so you can use that. You know, back then. Now, you know, any you know the full review, or if you wanted to find like, you know, cut out the piece that's you think is gonna be a selling point, and then put it on your marketing. So I mean, pre-releases are good. I know sometimes that's really hard to do because I had some friends in bands and they said trying to get a pre-release when they're trying to get the actual release out is a little difficult.
Wow. Yeah.
But occasionally, I don't think, I would ever return to doing reviews on that capacity. I think people nowadays, there's so many, all those different streaming sites that it's like some people just bypass reviews altogether and they just go and listen to the streaming. It's like how they say, let the music do the talk. But
there's
then
so much stuff out there these days as well. There's just so much stuff. I never thought we'd be in this situation. I always thought there wouldn't be that much prog, as it were, but there's absolutely tons of it. And I know Kev Rowland very well, and I don't know how he does it because he's been reviewing and he's still reviewing albums for years, and he's always got a ton of CDs. And I don't know where I don't know where sometimes you guys get the motivation, and also to be able to listen to it and to sort of get some idea of that album and then move on to the next one, then the next one. I couldn't do it.
Oh yeah, it was difficult at times, because I would have a notepad, writing down, writing down, for each song and kind of giving a little, basic wording about what I thought about the song. There was times where I was doing my reviews where I did, talked about each song individually, but then when there's albums that have more of a concept, that didn't work, so I had to do more on a whole. So it's like, you got to figure out each album that you get is so different based on how, if they're a collection of like 8-minute to, and then maybe the last one is maybe a 20-minute or something like that, and it's like, or you get, that concept album where you got songs that maybe are 1.5 minutes to like 6 minutes, and anywhere in between.
Zero.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you get that. I mean, that is one of those albums that you can't just pick out a place to a song to listen to. It's like
it's all linked together.
Yeah, so it's like it's a one piece. I mean, there was another band that did something similar to that around the same time or maybe a little earlier. At Fate's Warning, they did it was a Pleasant Shade of Gray, and it was like I think it was like 50-ish minutes, and it's like it was a concept album, but it had a recurring musical theme going through the whole album. So it's like there's really no way to say, oh well, listen to part 3. It's like, no, you got to listen to beginning to end to get it. It's just the same with Year Zero. You got to listen to beginning to end. It's not one of those albums that you can just like pick a hit single, because that's not how it was created, and it's like, I mean, it's just the same as like, newer bands, like for example, like Transatlantic. I mean, with this latest thing where they put out two versions of their album, they have the single disc version of it and what they call an edit. And then
I saw that. I read about that.
But the thing is, the single version is really not an edit of it. It's just this different, sometimes different songs, but with, in the same concept of it. And then they got that double one, and it's like, and then they had some package that even comes up with with the records and a Blu-ray
Mm.
Blu-ray audio of
I think
mix.
it's interesting what you're saying there, Ron, because I've often wondered about doing different formats. I think, no, hang on a minute. At the end of the day, we're writing a record here, an album. And I think it dilutes it if you have all these different, you know, versions, this version, that. This is the version with the three. Do you know what I mean? And I think fans get confused. I would get confused. And in fact, it would actually put me off buying the album because I'd be thinking, I don't know what to buy. I mean, which one should I have? And I haven't got time to listen to all of it. My time is precious. I haven't got time to sit down and listen to loads of different versions of one album. And I think the key is to, I don't know what Dean thinks about this, but I think the key is just to write a damn good album, a good, you know, and like we said earlier on, to have it so it's sequenced in a way that we're happy with, and then just stick it out then and minimize the amount of all this extra stuff. I know people think, well, it's a way of selling it, it's a way of maybe getting people to buy it, but I'm not convinced. It doesn't work with me. I just want to listen to a good, decent album, and that's that.
And then it's I'm sure it's probably like a limited edition, which it only, I think those type of editions are geared towards the super diehard fans with a lot of money. You know, it's someone would say it's like it's created for a certain niche of people. You know, it's not for
like the
all
5.1 mixers and that kind of stuff for all the people who've got the 5.1 stereo systems, which are ridiculously expensive and which most of us haven't got. So, and people have said to us before about releasing on 5.1 Dolby, whatever, I can't remember what it is, but I've always said, yeah, we'd love to, but you know, there's no point if we're only going to sell about 40. Do you know what I mean? It's not worth our while. So,
well, I just recently got it was a reissue of Eddie Jobson's The Zinc album, and then also hit the I guess it's the next one called Theme of Secrets, and it has each of the CDs, and then there's a Blu-ray disc of the mix of both the CDs, and something like that. That's kind of nice, where the Blu-ray thing is like, it's just an extra. You know, you don't. The only way you're gonna listen to it is if you got, like, you know, one of the newer 4K TVs that's gonna get the full effect. And then again, like I said, you know, headphones are, I think, are the best way to listen to something like that, because then, you know, it's like I saw a T-shirt where it says, "Headphones on, world off."
Perfect. Yeah.
And you know, it's like I like to go, you know, whatever CD I put in, you know, I like to go into this room, put on the headphones, sometimes turn off the light, and just lean back and just listen.
It's a good way of absorbing yourself into it, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah, and you go, and especially if the music, not only if the music, but the lyrics take you to another world, and you see if, you know, if you can go to that world, you know, especially in the early days of prog, and occasionally you still get people that have you know, the Dungeons and Dragons vibes, you know, the lyrics, you know, like Tolkien, and you know, any fantasy lyrics going on, where, you know, you're going, you know, I think ultimately music is an escape. And and especially, you know, with this past year, you know, a lot of us need that escape, you know, to go to a, you know, a safe place, you know, a world that, you know, doesn't have this lockdown.
Yeah.
I can't imagine with, you know, I keep on seeing all my musician friends that are like, you know, etching to go play their music live. You know, if they put out something during the lockdown, it's like, you know, what was it? Rossfest is not going to open up until 2022. So it's like, you got to wait, you know, now another year for stuff, but then I'm seeing people that want to do it sooner, and it's like, you know, I know you guys need to make money, but is it worth risking people's health, you know, to make that money? And that's
you're
why
not going to get a promoter be interested in a half-filled auditorium either, are you? You know, they got to make it worthwhile.
I was reading, actually watching a lot of YouTube different, you know, interview things, and someone was talking about, you know, the newest version of the band Quiet Riot, which has absolutely 0 original members, and they were going to play I think this May or something like that, a club in New York, and they were charging like $80 a ticket, and because the, you know, of the capacity, you know, be on low capacity, so maybe probably if the place held 200 seats, they're probably going to do less than half that, and it's like, you know, with everybody spread out, but still, I mean, again, I understand they want to charge that money so they can at least make something back, but it just, you know, gotta be careful out there now. You know, it's like, and that's what I've actually seen some bands do live shows on the internet and, you know, sell tickets for it. I think there was one band on the Inside Out music label that was doing that, and I was looking at the comments, and there was the one guy goes, "Why should we have to pay for an internet concert? Because we're not really seeing you live." And it's like, well, you know, I said, it's because it costs them money to do that internet concert. That, you know, maybe it's not the same amount of money as, you know, a lot, you know, in a concert hall, but they have to pay for it. It's not coming out of, the money's not coming out of nowhere for them to do this, you know, and let.
I did that back in September. I paid for a live internet gig, and it was brilliant, and it actually felt quite special. So
yeah, especially
I really liked it. Really liked it. It was Howard Jones was on, just him and the piano, and he played for about an hour and 20 minutes. It was brilliant. It was really good, and well worth the money. Absolutely well worth the money. It was a great experience.
Yeah, and as I know with Zoom, because is it sometimes my voice comes a little bit further after, you know, the syncing of everybody, that you really couldn't do, you know, you playing your piano or your keyboards and
that's right,
Stuart singing and to have it sync up.
There'd be too much latency.
We did discover that, didn't we, when we did our live stream? So we ended up having to record ourselves individually and then just merge it together that way. That was the only way of doing it. Absolutely the only way of doing it. Yeah,
and it's like, I mean, maybe down the line, maybe someone out there that knows technology enough that they can figure out how to make it where you guys are, you know, be able to hear, you know, the same way as when you're on the stage.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is like bands that have that they live in the same city and now get tested regularly, and then of course now we got the vaccines slowly coming out, that, you know, renting like a little studio that has a stage where you guys go up on there, and then you have someone in the engineer booth with a good video camera broadcasting it that way. Is another and I saw the other interesting thing is there's a lot of lockdown videos on YouTube where different musicians from different bands get together and they record their piece, and then it's like one will be in one box and the other. And going back to my my youth, the drummer from Anthrax, he started doing these lockdown videos where they do covers of different bands. And all of a sudden, one time he's doing, I think it was Landslide by Fleetwood Mac on my
Right.
phone. And then he did one, I forgot which video he did, or the song he did, where he just had a singer, and he did not only the drums, but he did the guitar, the bass, and the keyboards. And I never knew the guy could play those other instruments. I thought he was just the drummer.
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, just all these things to do. I mean, like if you get your, Galahad, everybody records a piece and have someone mix it together, for like, a lockdown video, because like one of them was saying.
Yeah, we have done a couple. We have done a couple already, haven't we? So there's one on my YouTube channel. I think, is it Myopia, Stuart? I'm trying to remember what it is now.
It could be Myopia, yeah.
I think it's Myopia we put up there, where we recorded all of our parts individually, and then Mark Spence put it all together for us into a merged video. It worked out really well.
Oh yeah, those look so much fun and to do, and I think like which one guy was saying that he said this is a way to let our fans know that we're here with you. You can't see us live, but here's like the next best thing. And
plus recording as well. I mean, we've still been writing and what have you, and Dean and myself have recorded a couple of dozen songs in the last year or so.
Actually, more than normal.
much more than normal. Yeah. Exactly. We got enough for about 3 hours.
Forced us into a situation. Stuart's got himself a home studio now, because we had to do something. So it's actually maybe in some ways has actually been quite a good experience.
Right.
Well, I've had to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I see two sides of what's going on out there. I've seen bands that already put at the beginning of 2020 put out something, and they got ready to put something either at the end of 2020 or sometime in 2021. And then I have like a friend of mine's band, Nicholson. They just started. Yeah, back in last March, they were starting to write for a new album, and then they heard, they told lockdown it's going to be a 2-week thing. It's like, more than 2 weeks. It's like, and they're still waiting for the time where they can get back together because they're in different states. So it's like they're waiting to get back together so they can make that album. But then there's people that are, I guess, tech whizzes where they can do everything online, and it's like.
Well, we have a Galahad album. We have enough material for 2 Galahad albums that we're working on at the moment.
Yeah, thank goodness we were able to record the drums before lockdown. We actually recorded the drums at the end of 2019, and then we couldn't get back in the studio in April last year. And it was, I think, during the summertime that we started to think, hold on a sec, we can probably do the rest of the takes ourselves at home. We've all got home studios. We would have been stuck without the drums, but thank goodness we got the drums first. So they're almost finished. The album's almost done. Yeah.
And there's a lot of it. There's probably 2 albums worth there, isn't there? Or getting on for 2 albums worth. Yeah. So now we've been quite lucky. Yeah. And so Ron, there'll be plenty of Galahad related stuff coming out in the next year or 2.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, it's nice when bands have a regular schedule, even though a majority of the progressive rock bands today, this is not your primary job.
Exactly.
I mean, you get like a very rare time when music is the person's, let's say like case in point from Transatlantic, you know, the drummer, Mike Portnoy. I mean, he, you know, he lives and breathes music. So it's like, that's his job. You know, I don't know what he does behind the scenes, but, you know, he's put out a couple nice little lockdown videos, cover songs, a few, I think one or two
They
of
all
them
are,
with
because
his,
you got Pete there as well, Pete from Marillion, and
Yeah.
and Royner. Is it Royner Stolt from
Yes.
Flower King? And Neil
Yeah.
Morse.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, I was looking into the, I don't know about anywhere else in the world, but I was looking at in Sweden, that Sweden has their government kind of sponsors the music.
they do. We played there a few years ago, and they got a local grant to put on shows and gigs.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's almost the same as like up in Canada. They had I'm not sure if they still have it, but they had a similar thing when it came to independent movies.
oh right.
They got a grant, you know, from the government to make the movie. And it's like, and I remember there was one, I watched an interview with director David Cronenberg, where one of his earlier movies, it was like really out there horror. And it's like, and he says, I'm amazed that the government actually funded this movie, because it got, you know, like I think a couple of his movies in your country got tagged under that video nasties,
Right.
you know, and so it's like that in itself is a kind of an interesting thing, how this one woman basically started this thing in your country where she's going to ban movies because she didn't understand. And I think
Mary
they were,
Whitehouse.
yeah.
Exactly.
And you know, and from what I heard on one documentary that she didn't see any of these movies. So it's like she was getting all her information from word of mouth.
God, yeah.
And it's like, you know, and it's like, and I know there's some like movies that that decades later you finally get to see them, other than the other way was doing it, you know, the pirated way. And they said some of the you get caught, there's some pretty what is it, things that they accuse you of, and you know, fines and possible jail time. And it's like going, just for a movie? I said, don't they understand that, you know, it's all it is it's a movie, it's an art form, just like music. And regardless of if it falls under your criteria of what an art form is supposed to be, you know, it's like everybody has a slightly different view of what they
just
think.
because you don't like something doesn't mean to say you've got to legislate against it.
Exactly.
No,
I
that's
mean,
right. Yeah.
You know, honestly, the people that should be doing the legislative of music and movies is the person's parent. They're under the legal age, whatever, you know, here in the United States, it's 18. So if you're under 18 here in the United States, it's up to your parents to, you know, to doing the censoring. Not a government agency, not a religious group or anything like that. It should be your parents. And I was very lucky that it was mostly my father that, when it came to movies, because I used to love watching the scary ones, and he was always there with me, with whether we're watching it on the television or if we went to the movie theater, you know, always there. I mean, I saw my first horror movie when I was 9 years old, and it wasn't one of the mainstream kind of horror movies. This was what they call a grindhouse type, where it's just
Right.
on a shoestring budget, but they were really graphic. And of course, going to horror movies that came out of your country, Hammer. I love
Oh, yeah, the
Hammer.
Hammer horror movie.
What is it? Amicus? Is that how they pronounce it? And Trigon. Those the three big ones that put out horror movies from like the 50s up into like the 80s, because I think a lot of those studios, went under in the 80s.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, but then, that's what I noticed that, in music in general, that horror movies and music have some sort of parallels of themes, and and trying to get released, especially if a band has something, the subject matter is a little bit the explicit side. It's just when someone complains, oh, that album has a lot of swearing in it, and it's like, so does a lot of rated R movies that you go to.
Yeah.
So it's like, where it's how that artist was trying to convey the message that he or she wanted to give the world. And so, and of course, those Italian progressive rock bands in the 70s that did a lot of soundtrack work, like Goblin, some of these wildest soundtrack work. And it was like it was made. There was like how'd you say, a match made in heaven. It's like, who else to do a horror soundtrack or a science fiction soundtrack than a prog band? Because they can get into those themes a lot easier than, mainstream rock. Mainstream, they're only set in their little box. Whereas prog bands, you guys always think outside of the box. So it's like it's just I'm really glad that over the years bands like Galahad have put out really quality music without being on a major label, as able to do that without, and I think at that, with the same way of not being on a major label, you have more freedom to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And create your music. So it's, that's what I just like, the adventure.
I think that's one reason why we're still here. I think if we had gone the way of major label, and we did make the effort back in the early days, again somewhat naively, we were never going to get anywhere really, but I think the fact that we never did get involved with major labels was a good thing, because it's meant that we've kept going. I think the amount of pressure they put on you is too much, in terms of, you have to, play certain amount of shows. You have to go when they say. They control your merchandising. They have the last say in what you put on your albums. And we do it for fun, because we want to be creative, and to be stifled by that kind of stuff, or with other people getting their oars in, that wouldn't work. Plus, I think we're quite strong individuals. We've been sure of what we wanted to do. So, and I, for one, am terrible. I don't like being told what to do by anybody, to be honest, especially in terms of music, because we have we tend to have clear ideas of what we want and what we want to do, and that quite often doesn't work well with a major record company,
Right.
or whatever.
Well, yeah, it's like when I guess a lot of the 80s bands from England, I'm sure a lot of them were approached by, what was it, EMI?
Well, EMI had Marillion, And
Right.
then they regenerated the Harvest label, which was obviously the early 70s progressive rock label, which had Deep Purple and Pink Floyd back in the day. And they reinvigorated that label. They reintroduced it, sorry, in order to release the Palace album, Sentinel.
Right.
And but the thing was that they never really put any that much effort behind it. And
Right.
I know that there's a rumor, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I know that Fish wasn't particularly happy that another prog band was coming into the realms of EMI, because although it was Harvest, it was all part of EMI, and he wasn't too
Right.
keen on that, as I recall. And I think he made a bit of a fuss about it at the time, from what I've been told. And and IQ, you know, they signed to Vertigo, and they had
Right.
Terry Brown producing them, who used to produce Rush, obviously, back in the early days.
Right.
But you know, the thing is, that's just the start of it. It just didn't work. They had a new singer, they had Paul Manel, and it just all went wrong. And and when we saw that, because we were playing at that point, we thought, actually, it's just as well, you know, we haven't done that, because it could destroy the band. And the other thing they used to do back in the day, I mean, maybe they still do it, is they used to get a band, say that they wanted to take them on, but what they would do, they would just take on the main songwriters and ditch the rest of the band and get new people in, you know, for Image or whatever. And they tried that with a few bands that I knew as well, you know, when they tried, you know, basically take on the main two. And so the band that ends up on the label is completely different from the band that started off in the first place.
Well,
So,
it's like, another thing with a major label, Sony, that band Echoin, back in I think it was 94, they got signed to Sony. They put out their one album, but then they were what they would call the write-off album, a band. You know, they were just there just to write them off.
Yeah.
And then what they did is that Echoin in limbo, and the band split off into two factions. One kind of continued almost an Echoin sound, but more stripped down guitar, bass, drums. And then the keyboard went off, and he did like a more fusion band. And then 5 years later, in 2000, they got the rights to use the Echoin name again. So it's like they were put in limbo for 5 years, and it's like,
well, that's the other thing. Publishing, you know, we've always been in complete control of our music, and any royalties, in theory, should come straight to us and go nowhere else. And I've always been very wary of that. And we would lose that. And I think 12th Night had a similar problem. I remember talking to Brian about it. He wanted to put a lot of his stuff on Bandcamp, but he couldn't put a lot of the officially released stuff on Virgin and Music for Nations on Bandcamp, because the copyright was still owned by Hit and Run Music. Tony Smith's, you know, publishing company, obviously Genesis manager, you know. And so I'm not even sure now. I mean, I'm not sure they may have rights in perpetuity. I don't know. But I know it's always been a bugbear of Brian that he can't, you know, it's like you're in the band, it's your own music. And the idea that someone else owns it and controls it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't, you know. And it's like, I mean, the first time I ever heard of that is when Michael Jackson went and bought all of the Beatles stuff.
He did.
And it's like, you know, it's like, I think he's got it all back now, or a good chunk of it. And it's like, it shouldn't have gone away from his.
No.
You know,
he was outbid for his own music, wasn't he?
Yeah, and
that's
it's like
crazy.
And I think, if I remember, I saw an interview. I think Michael Jackson kind of almost like went like in your face, I'm taking your music. You know, that kind of an attitude. And
I recently saw an interview with Paul McCartney, and he said that quite childlike Michael Jackson, the way he said, "Oh, I'm going to buy your music," because he gave him some advice on publishing.
Right.
And he never believed he really would. And of course, Michael Jackson did. He did buy his music, and that turned into a massive rift between the two of them. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think the business side of the music business is what causes, especially in the major bands, causes breakups or people
Yeah.
leaving, you know, and then you got people that, you know, refuse to be in the same room with each other. And it's like, you know,
like Roger, for example.
yeah. Yeah, it's like
Roger
I
and
mean,
David.
yeah, I know they want that, and it's like I saw something about that, you know.
And
There's
Nick just wants everyone to be happy families.
yeah, Nick seems to
And he's
be
a
the
nice
one.
guy, actually. I've met him a couple of times. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, he's got his little band that was doing a lot of touring before the lockdown.
Saucer Full of Secrets. We saw the first gig they ever did in a theatre. Saucer Full of Secrets. They played at Portsmouth Guildhall. It was the first show of the tour, and it was fantastic. Loved it. And you got the guy from Spandau Ballet doing the singing, you know, guitarist and the Blockheads, you know, and it was really good. And a couple of Pink Floyd guys as well, you know. So
yeah, and it was just nice to see someone being nostalgic about that. But you know, it didn't. They weren't just. I don't think they were just playing the hits. I think they were playing a lot of what they call the deep tracks.
oh, they did
deep
all
cuts.
sorts of stuff, to be honest. Everything from the psychedelia right up to things like One of These Days, you know. But it was all pre-Dark Side of the Moon, all pre-1973, basically. So there was stuff off Metal, Atom Heart Mother, you know, plus Saucer Full of Secrets itself, you know. So and things like the singles, you know, Arnold Lane, stuff like that. So it was quite a varied set, to be honest.
Yeah, and
Great fun.
I saw
Gary
a lot of.
Kemp did a really good job. So
Yeah, I saw a lot
I
of
never
the
thought I'd
clips
see
on
the
YouTube.
singer. Sorry, I never thought I'd see the singer. The main songwriter from Spandau Ballet singing Pink Floyd songs.
It's honestly, it's amazing how a lot of those bands they do. You know, it's a big misconception when someone's playing, you know, singing that, you know, like Spandau Ballet or, you know, some heavy metal stuff, that because that's the music they play, that's the music they listen to, and it's like, and it's wrong.
I think musicians, we all know musicians are just musicians, and it's like it's the press that compartmentalize everything. And I remember an interview with Gary Kemp, and he was saying, well, Pink Floyd aren't that a million miles from Spandau Ballet, because Spandau Ballet, they came up in a different era, but they came up in a club scene, in an underground club scene, which was the new romantic scene in the early 80s. Whereas Pink Floyd came up in the psychedelic scene in London as well in the late 60s. So they were kind of similar in a way, you know, and both of those things just blew up into something massive. And a lot of those bands from the 80s, like Dean said earlier, because it was the 80s, obviously a lot of their influences were from the 60s and the 70s. And like Howard Jones loved the LP, he was in a prog band before he went solo, you know. And people like Duran Duran. I mean, I remember Simon Le Bon saying he was a massive Genesis fan. And even Elvis Costello said he was a massive Genesis fan, but he couldn't have said that in 1977 because it'd have been hung, drawn, and quartered.
Right. Yeah, it's like, you know, and then come, you know, when I mean, all I knew at the time, you know, Duran Duran, and then I found out, you know, their influences, you know, Roxy Music, and then I think also I mean the look from that band Japan,
Yeah.
you know, had that but that was like a few years before that new romantic look was popular, and it's like I think Japan was doing it like in 78, 79.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, they, as a rock band.
You know, and it's like, you know, so it's
also
like
Gary Newman as well, Tube by Army. They were doing it beforehand as well.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, that's why I really like to research and discover things. I don't just allow the media to tell me what is good, you know, because for me, more times than enough is that the hit single isn't the best song off of the album. It's just
Yeah.
the best marketed.
It's the promo part. Yeah.
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 To draw in the masses, to give the one with the nice melodies, to draw. I mean, a lot of people who like music, really, let's face it. I mean, we're sort of hardcore because we love music, but most people aren't really interested. They just want a nice little melody, you know, and hear it on the radio and go and buy the single. They're not, you know, hardcore into music for the sake of it. You know, they're just they like a nice tune.
I used to have a friend of mine back in the cassette days. We had a cassette club where you buy like eight cassettes and you pay a penny or $1, and then you have to buy over the course of like 2 or 3 years the full price, like $10 for the cassette at that time. But he would get the cassettes, and whatever the hit singles were on the cassettes, he would fast forward, rewind, and just to those. And he didn't listen to the rest of the songs. And I'm like going, I found it was because of him that I began to think, okay, no, I want to listen to the whole album. I'm not going to just listen to the hit song, just be, you know. And it's like, and I think that what they call deep cuts is where you really hear the band shine, and also for a band to be when they play live, where some of the audience is like, I only want to hear the hits, and the other audience is, I want to hear everything.
Yeah, no, it's right. I agree. I mean, I remember listening to Killer Queen on Top of the Pops. I saw Killer Queen on Top of the Pops, Queen, and they were by far and away the best band on that particular episode at that time. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I loved the single. And then I went to my local record shop, the Generation Gap, and a few weeks later, and I bought Sheer Heart Attack, the album, and I was blown away because the album was so diverse. It was the rest of it was so different to Killer Queen. You know, with things like Tenement and Fun Still, you had the heavy rock stuff. The Misfire had In the Lap of the Gods, which is almost proggy in a way, you know, a very sort of prog rap. And then you had delicate things like Lily of the Valley, which to me is one of Freddie's best vocal performances, you know.
Right.
Such a beautiful, pure vocal, you know, to a piano backing. And I was absolutely blown away. And in fact, last year I bought it again because I'd worn the old one out.
Yeah, I got a few years back, they put the box sets where there was 3 of them where they boxed the individual albums, and they were like rematch. I think it was 2012. I
got the News of the World one.
Yeah, but I got them they were in the set, you know, all of them, and including up to that last one that was made after Freddie passed, Made in Heaven. Yeah, even that. And it's like, but to listen to over the years, it's like how they changed in the 70s, how they changed from Queen 1 to Queen 2, which I'll tell you is my favorite of their album.
March of the Black Queen is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, that album, if someone had to ask me what's your go-to Queen album or the only one that you're going to listen to for the rest of your life, and for me it's Queen 2.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and I mean it just was, to me, it was so different, and at that time for a rock band to do something like that, and because they really weren't categorized as anything at that point.
No.
And then of course once they progressed, you know, past Night of the Opera, then, you know, it's like they were all over the map.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I must admit I prefer the earlier stuff, but I would, because that's how when I grew up, and I obviously I was more impressionable in those days. But also I understand why they changed. I even understand why Genesis changed. I get that. I get the fact that they want to try different things and do different things, even if it does sound more commercial or that, you know, more convoluted or whatever. But then again, on the last album they ever did, the last track of the last album they ever did, Fading Lights, I think is a brilliant song. I love it. I think it was almost like Phil Collins was saying, this is it, that's it, final. And it actually gives me goosebumps.
Right.
And that's,
And then when they came back, I think that was 91. I think it was like 5 or so years later, they came back. It was just Tony and Mike, and then they brought in
Ray Wilson,
and then they just had various drummers.
Nia Zed, Nick DiVigilio.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like, and that's a really overlooked album because I think it was, they were trying too much to sound like Phil.
Yeah.
Whereas Ray's voice was more Peter's, you know, he had that more raspy,
more gruff. Well, he was in Stiltskin, wasn't he?
Yeah.
The band. So yeah.
So it's like, that's one of the ones that a lot of people overlook because, you know, only 2 of the core members were there, and they was said that there was supposed to have been a follow-up album, but it just didn't happen because the tour didn't.
Well, they wanted to tour the States and they didn't sell enough tickets, did they? They had to cancel the American tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because people were, you know, didn't want to. Oh, no Phil. Well, you know, it was the same thing as when there was no Peter. No, we're not going to go. Now it's no Phil. No, we're not going to go. It's like no one wants to really take chances on bands when they change members. You know, especially if it's the singer.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of wrong in a way, because it's like if you don't give something a chance, you never know. You know. Now, of course, you know, it's like it's not going to be the same, but you might enjoy it. You know? But if you're right off the bat just saying no, I'm not going to listen to you. You know, it's just, I think for me it's wrong, and you know, it shows a person being very close-minded. And if you really call yourself a progressive rock fan, you should be open to any possibilities, you know. At least to me, as you know, that's how I look at it. With, you know, yeah, I was kind of taken aback that, you know, Phil wasn't on it. Then, you know, it's like going, okay, well, let's hear what they're gonna do, you know. And unfortunately, I know a lot of that material was written when Phil was still in the band. So it's like they had written it for Phil, and, you know.
They had to change the keys on some of the songs live. Carpet Crawlers, for example, was taken down. So because I listened, I have got a recording of the tour they did with Ray, actually, a video recording, and some of the songs just sound a bit strange, but it's because they've taken the keys down, so it doesn't quite work in the same way. It doesn't have that same dynamic. But you know, at the end of the day, they wanted a tour, they wanted to play. It must be really hard when you have that problem. You know, it's the same with Brian and Roger in Queen. You know, everyone castigates them, but they want to play, they want to tour. They're musicians, it's what they do, you know.
Exactly.
And the fact that Freddie isn't there, there's nothing they can do about that. So,
no.
You know, it is a shame. I mean, but it's like Graham Goldman from 10cc. He loves playing. So the band he goes out with, they're not the original 4 members of 10cc.
Right.
And people castigate that. But those 4 members were only in the band for 4 years, from 1972 to 1976. And they even released 2 albums after Lol Cream and Kevin Godley had left, Bloody Tourists and Deceptive Bends, which had big hits on. And the guys who played on those albums, the drummer Paul Burgess and Rick Fenn, who plays guitar, they've been in the band since then. So although it's not the original lineup, they've still been in the band since the mid to late 70s. And people say, "Oh, it's not the original lineup." It's like,
Oh, I know.
it's like Galahad. Oh, it's not the same. So I need Stuart from the original band.
Well,
Nobody cares.
yeah, what was it? A friend of mine, he does a similar type of a show. His name, Sean Toner, and he had I think a few weeks ago, he was talking with Kevin Godley, and so unfortunately they couldn't get the video portion going well, so they had to do it over the phone. So the phone was very scratchy, but it's just interesting that you can get someone and their perspective from instead of like getting someone that's my age and getting only the perspective from basically most people my age were musically aware towards the late 70s. So it's like from that point forward, and then some people like to go back and explore the roots of rock music. I was one of the few, but then to actually hear someone that was playing music at that time is always a treat. Just the same as like talking to you, from you playing the music of the time that I was really more aware of music in the 80s. It's like, so it's just I get a glimpse into that time period, whereas normally I wouldn't have known a lot of things. But it's like, and then right here, one of my main reasons for doing this is everybody that I have on the show, I kind of want other people that may not know you to find out about you, and you guys, that you can get to different audiences.
Yeah.
And that's really my primary goal, is to make sure that people know who you are, and where I think if someone calls themselves a progressive rock fan and they don't know who Galahad is, I think they need to know.
It's amazing the amount of people who don't know who we are.
Right. And I think it's because it's just like any other genre, other bands get overshadowed, and sometimes people give their full attention to, again, like I was saying, is what the media tells them to listen to.
Yeah. We've never really been ones to kind of shout from the rooftops. We're just not like that. It's just not the way we operate. It's almost like, I don't know, maybe it's this, I said it before, I've used the word before, maybe I'm slightly naive, it's almost like you sometimes think that people are going to come to you, but obviously they're not. You've got to go out, and we always do a certain amount of publicity and promo and marketing, etc. But maybe over the years we should have done more or whatever. But the primary purpose that we exist is to write and record music and to go out and play. And it's not about filling stadiums or being, look at me, I'm famous and I know so and so and I'm best mates with Tony Banks or something. It's
right.
It's not about that. Do you know what I mean? It's just us quietly kind of doing what we love doing. And as long as we enjoy doing that and we enjoy each other's company and writing stuff and it's a good feeling. I mean, it's like me and Dean have been working on a lot of stuff lately, and it's just to be able to get that feeling of producing something on record or on tape or whatever after all these years as well, and to come up with new ideas. I think that's something special, because a lot of people fade away and then maybe they lose their passion and they've fallen by the wayside and they're not interested. Whereas for some reason, I just absolutely love doing it. And I love that feeling when you listen back to a song and you think, yeah, that sounds really good, and I love what you've done now. I love that, or I love what Dean's played, or Lee, or Spence, or Phil, or something. Do you know what I mean? It's just to still get that excitement at bit, you know, at 57 years old, which is what unfortunately I am now, and I think it is something special, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's good, and especially at the moment, it's quite good catharsis. Hang on, we have a
special guest.
Sammy.
We have a cat. He's only got 3 legs, unfortunately. He's only got 1 front paw because he had cancer, sarcoma, and he had to have his left hand paw removed a couple of months ago. But he's still with us.
That's good. That's good.
That's Sammy G. So he's just come to say hello.
He's the mascot.
Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah. No, he's a good boy. But as you can see there, he's only got 1 front paw.
Yeah.
Oh.
Poor little thing. But all his fur's growing back now, so he's feeling much better than he was. There you go. You can go now.
He sounded like he was doing better, you know, with the meowing and everything. You know.
Oh, he makes a lot of noise. He's very noisy at times. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. See, he had to say, "Yeah, I am." Yeah.
And Dean's. I don't know where.
She's still asleep.
Still.
I presume that's Scully, is it? I presume.
Yeah, it was my Scully. Yeah. Oh, as we're all showing our cats, I might as well. This is Scully. Look at there.
Hello, Scully. Hello.
Oh, she looks very happy to have been woken up. Oh dear.
Hello, Sammy. Oh dear.
Yeah. I have 3 of them out there.
Oh, really?
One that's 13, one that's 6, and then the newest one is 3. And she's almost all Siamese, so she meows a lot and follows me and talks to me, you know.
Yeah, no, it's nice. Yeah.
But it's good to have animals around, you know.
Oh, especially I think at the moment they're saying that animals have been really important to people, haven't they, with lockdown?
Oh yes, yeah. And if it wasn't for these 3 cats, and then just right over there I have a hamster that's kind of looking at me, and then my girlfriend has an aquarium full of fish, different varieties, and it's like, if it wasn't for them, it you know, they kind of, you know, make you feel like, okay, we're in lockdown, but you know, look at these creatures. They don't, you know, they're not.
I agree.
They can if they can be active on their own, you know, because
do what they do, no matter what.
Yeah, you know, there's all of them are basically solitary creatures, and they can keep creative or busy on their own. You know, I think we can too, and I think a lot of us are keeping busy. I do see a lot of people that are doing the "woe is me" thing.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and it's like, if I honestly think the "woe is me" thing would only pertain if it was something that was localized, but this is a global thing. Everybody...
I think that's it, and I think sometimes people lose sight of that. And at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. Globally, we're in the same boat, which is amazing. Yeah. It's never really happened before, and you just have to make the most of it and get on with it. And from bringing us back to the whole band thing, I mean, there's several bands we've known that have called it a day purely because of it, because they can't do what they want to do. And I'm thinking, are you really that passionate about it then? Because if you really cared about it, you'd find a way to do something. And it's like we've been writing and recording and coming up with ideas and trying to do other stuff. So we'll always find a way. You know, hopefully we can play live at some point in the next year or two, and we've tentatively been booked for some concerts and what have you. Whether they'll happen or not, we don't know. I mean, you know, hopefully they will, but you've got to be realistic about it. At the end of the day, you know, staying alive is more important than anything else. So
exactly, and also too, it's like, you know, the sooner these controlled, you know, every country seems to have it. These naysayers that think this is some plot, you know, some.
yes, exactly. It's very strange.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's like it's so aggravating when I hear this, you know, and I see, you know,
The earth is flat.
yeah, you know, those people. I was like going, you know, I don't know who's feeding you this information, but you know, you need to come back to reality. You know, it's like, you know, Fantasyland it needs to be over. You know, we need to get back. We need to everybody collectively doing what your medical guidelines of your country tell you to do. New Zealand, I think, is the only country in the world that actually had it under control from day one. You know, the prime minister down there locking it down immediately for, I think it was like 7 or 8 weeks. A complete lockdown, I think, including like curfews and everything. And the only, you know, you had to have a valid reason to be out and about, you know, and if we all, every country.
I think you're right, but I think also you have to get it in context. I mean, the population of New Zealand is only the same as a big city in the UK, you know.
Right, that's true.
You haven't got, you know, tens of millions of people or hundreds of millions in the case of the States and what have you.
Right.
So I think what she did was fantastic, and I think they did the right thing. But I think it's probably easier to put controls in place for a smaller population, generally.
Yeah, and then, but it's a nice. You can look at it more of like a blueprint, you know, as to how to control it. You know, if you did it that way, I mean, I think we probably would have been on the other side months ago if we'd done it, especially in the States. But, you know, we got to do what the leaders tell you to do, you know, or don't.
And I guess it depends on the mentality of the public as well, doesn't it? Because some people just don't want to cooperate. You know, they just.
Exactly. They don't want to be told what they have to do on that. I mean, there's other things you don't like to be told what to do. But for this, for health reasons, you know, we got to, because I mean, the entertainment industry is slowly getting back. I mean, you've seen television series readapting themselves, you know, during the pandemic. I mean, I just noticed on one show that I watched, Walking Dead, they're not doing like on a big ensemble cast right now. They're just concentrating on 2 or 3 people here, 2 or 3 people. Each episode is just, you know, like that. And you see other TV shows where people are wearing their masks when they're out in public, and then when they get back into a home, they take them off, you know. And it's like, it's, you know, that's slowly getting back. And I think the musicians are saying, well, if they can do it, why can't we? Well, I think the reason why you can't is because majority of the venues you play are in very enclosed, tight spaces. Unless you play, even stadiums, even though it's not, you know, 4 walls and a ceiling, you know, it's still you're very tight, you know, almost like you can't even move your elbows.
Yeah.
You know, you're so tight. It's like, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. I hate to say this, but I'm gonna have to get the loo again. But we'll have to probably stop soon because I think my dinner's ready as well.
Okay, all right.
And it's
And-
Lindsay told me it's ready.
Oh. All right. Well, then let's close with, we got the last thing that you two guys did as the Galahad Electric Company, and then you have enough material for possibly two studio albums in the next year or two. So, and also too, is if you're people out there that have never heard of you, there is a lot of material that you guys put out that you reissued, with, bonus tracks like that Following Goats thing that
well, we basically re-recorded the whole album. Because I've always wondered what it would sound like to take an older album and basically reimagine it in a way. And, and that's kind of what we did. Some of the tracks are very faithful to the originals, but some of them are actually quite different.
There we go.
Oh,
there you go.
CD set. There we are.
Yeah, there you go. That's Dean's promo.
That's my.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that they can dive in, to. I would kind of recommend, if it's still, I think it's still available, the When Worlds Collide, so you can get a wide look at what your music.
It's available online. It's on. It's on. I think it might be on Bandcamp. I can't remember. We actually haven't got any physical copies anymore. We ran out of those, but I think you can get. I think you can download it. The trouble is, because it was a double CD, it was actually quite expensive to produce with the booklet and everything. So unfortunately, unless we had an order for several hundred copies suddenly, it's not really worth our while.
Right.
Because it will just sit in stock for months on end, basically.
Right.
But
yeah, that would be a good start, and then you can go either direction, past or present, and you'll be, just as well. If you like the more modern prog, a good way I think to start too is Empires Never Last. That would be.
I think that seems to be a lot of people's favorite. Empires, definitely, doesn't it? It does seems to be for us a shift in the right direction. When we first recorded that album, that was a new Galahad almost, wasn't it? I believe.
And we used Carl for the first time on that album, didn't we, as well?
Yeah, which was massive. Yeah, massive difference, I think.
No, definitely. Yeah.
Well, guys, I really appreciate that you took the time out of your day, to come chat with me on this. And again, also thank you for your music. I mean, your music really, for me, music keeps me sane, keeps me grounded,
Yeah.
And I appreciate you guys' music over the years, and I can't wait for more.
No, cheers, Ron. I mean, to be honest, it's guys like yourself and people who look out for the sort of thing that we do, because we're not mainstream, we're not on the front of magazines, we're not on the radio particularly. It's just nice that there are people like yourself and other people, luckily quite a few, hundreds of people, thousands maybe, who are looking at the music. And of course, we appreciate that as well. I mean, primarily we do it because we just love doing it. But of course, you want an audience. You want to share whatever you're doing with other people. And
exactly.
And it's even better when people are positive and they appreciate what you're doing and what you're trying to do and what have you, and it then motivates us to keep going and do more stuff,
Exactly.
And after 36 years, that's quite some feat, I think.
God, yeah.
Well, some bands that have been around that long, they kind of sound like they're on their last breath, but with you guys, it almost sounds like you're just, how do you say, just getting started.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I think we've said this before. It's like, with some of the older bands, especially in the 70s, it's like the first few albums were great, and then it kind of tails off a bit. Like their creativity tails off. They don't seem to have the imagination. And I think with us, actually, over the years, I think our albums have got stronger. I think the playing's got better. The subject matter has got more interesting, and I think also as you get older, I think you're just more honest. You're not bothered so much about what people think of you. So whenever I write a song now, I'll write about anything. I'll write about how I feel about anything. Whereas in the early days, when I was younger, you're a little bit thinking, oh, I don't want to talk about that. That's sort of private. And you worry about what people might think of you. But I think you don't. So in a way, it's liberating to know that we don't have any of that baggage anymore. We can just write about what we like. And also musical influences. These days, we won't say, oh, we can't write a song about that because it doesn't fall within the prog remit, or it doesn't fall within this or that remit. Whereas I think generally, and I think, Dean, I think you're the same, we just write how we feel. It could be anything. If something,
Yeah, it takes you where it takes you, doesn't it? And we're not trying to fit within a particular genre or a particular style. It just, like Stuart said earlier on, it just so happens to be that progressive fans do tend to relate to what we do.
Mm. Oh, yeah. And we've got that history going back from when we were tarred with the brush, if you like.
Yeah.
And basically it sort of stuck.
Right.
But that's good, because luckily a lot of what we do, even when it's not the pure progressive kind of stuff, people are still interested and are still, are still buying it and still supporting us. And as long as they do that, we will, carry on.
That's a perfect way to end it here, and again, Stuart, Dean, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
No, cheers, Ron. It's been good to see and actually talk to you after all these years.
Yes. I know it's an amazing thing, with the Zoom, that even though you're not with the person there in person, you get to kind of see them and hear them and, see their mannerisms on the way, where they speak and their body movements, Whereas, when you're on a messenger, you don't see it, you don't see or feel that, you just,
exactly.
You have to be
putting out information.
Sometimes, just occasionally, you might say something which is a little bit of a ironic statement, and people think you're being serious.
Exactly.
So it's good to have things like this.
I've had that on many occasions where people have had a different attitude towards me after I say something, and it's like, I'm like, sometimes I go, it's like, if you've been on my Facebook page for at least 2 years, you'll see that my sense of humor is dark and dry.
Yeah.
I find things funny that other people are like going, no, that's not funny. And it's like, and I think I owe it a lot to your country. Because I'll go back to when I was about 7 or 8 years old. My friend invited me over, for a weekend sleepover, and he had a few buddies over, and his older brother was watching Monty Python, and the other guys weren't getting it, and it was the one where they did self-defense against fruit.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And okay, they weren't getting it at all, and here they're looking at me like I'm the weird one, because I'm rolling around laughing hysterically, and
disarm like, someone with a banana.
Yeah, and I was like going, they didn't get it. I was like going, I mean, maybe I didn't get it, but it was just so absurd that it tickled my funny bone. Yeah. And I couldn't stop laughing for that whole weekend about that. Every time from then on for a few years, every time I saw a banana, I would just start bursting out. So it's like, but again, thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Good one.
it. And I can't wait to hear more music from you guys, and hopefully maybe one day see you guys live.
Yeah, you never know.
Oh, hopefully, yeah.
Well, we'll keep you posted anyway. I'll keep you posted on what we're up to.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you guys have a good rest of your evening. I guess it's what, like 9 or something?
9
About
o'clock.
quarter
or
to
so,
10
is it?
now.
Oh yeah, it is.
Oh, well.
Quarter to 10.
Yeah,
Bedtime.
better get your dinner before it's breakfast time.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
stomach's going to be burbling shortly. So,
All right, guys. Well, I will talk with you soon then.
yeah.
Lovely.
You guys take care now.
Yeah. and
Thanks,
you.
Ron. And
Look after
just
yourself.
one final thing is smoke me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast.
Very good.
Alrighty, guys. You guys have a good rest of your evening, and be safe out there.
Lovely.
Will do.
Thank you.
And
Take care.
keep-
Bye. Bye.
Bye.